G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video. This video continues on from the previous one. We are at Monza in Group 4 for FIA Nations Cup, and this is my third of 3 races that I did here. See, it's got its own video, which is nice and cute, but you might remember the previous video. This pretty much set the tone of the entire thing. I've got my qualifying lap blocked by man pack, and then I get wiped out in the same race at Ascari, thanks to being knocked around a little bit, and then an incident started by me, ended with me facing the wrong way towards the exit of Ascari rather than the entry for the second race. So that, needless to say, not ideal. You know, there are obviously more ideal things in this world than getting, 2 of 2 races consecutively destroyed at Ascari. Traditionally, you get your race destroyed at the Radeon chicane, not the Ascari chicane, which is the fastest of the 3 here on offer at Monza, but we'll stray away from that negativity. We're going to come to some positivity. Let's see, in my third of 3 races here at this combination, I think there are only 3 slots available as well, as this particular combination was on a Tuesday, which also has Manufacturers' Cup running. But we'll come to the qualifying session. I'm completely out of the way of any cars, so keep that in mind. Braking on the 150 metre board into the Radeon chicane, first gear through turns 1 and 2. It is, of course, the slowest point on the track here at Monza, and we're going to come up through Curva Grande, also known as Curva Biasino. I think Biasino is bowl in Italian. Don't quote me, I'm pretty sure it is though. Coming into the second chicane, the Variante della Roggia, braking just after the 150 metre board into second gear this time. You can carry a little bit more speed through this chicane here. It's a little bit more open, or quite a bit more open than turn 1, and then coming through the Lesmos now, braking just on the end of the shadow for Lesmo 1 and coming for quite a late apex to try and get onto the power as early as possible. Lesmo 2 were braking pretty much just slightly before the 50 metre board, climbing that curb on the middle or on the apex of the corner, and then riding that whole curb on the exit, but you do not want to touch the gravel. You can kind of get away with touching the gravel here and there in this car. It's a 4-wheel drive car, so as long as you've got, half your car on the road, you'll probably get a similar amount of grip, but, avoid the gravel where you can. Coming into Ascari, braking just on the sort of dirt exit road on the side of the track. Third gear through here, quite a lot more open than the previous 2 chicanes. You can pretty much get onto the power immediately after the first apex of Ascari, and then, ride the chicane all the way towards the exit in full throttle. Coming through to Parabolica, braking on the 100 metre board. Get a nice... This corner's actually really difficult. So you're trying to get onto the power, and the car's just understeering. End up a little bit wider than I would like. I like to take a line where I come right back over to the right hand side on the exit to sort of minimise distance. But you see, we come across the line with a 56.2. It puts us in provisional 4th place, and eventually by the end of the qualifying session it was 5th. But as always with the FIA races, let's enjoy the beautiful theatrical introduction. Right, so there we go. Let's see what we can do here at Monza for the 3rd time. So, the previous 2 races, as we know, didn't go well. So hopefully, the 3rd and final available slot for this, hopefully we can do a bit better. I will say, the reason I did all of the slots for this race, and the reason I did is because when I first saw this combination, I thought, yes, that is something I can do well at. And, given my pace in qualifying time trial, I still felt that, and luck just wasn't going my way, and I nearly get pushed off coming through turn 1. And actually, this really annoyed me here. Captain Muffin 88 gave me a little bit of a nudge on the sort of apex of turn 2, and he goes on through anyway. I nearly end up off the track, and he just flashes his hazards. That is typically done to say kind of thank you to another driver, but he kind of just put his hazards on and was like, oh, sorry, but I'm going to take your position anyway, even though, you know, he gave us a nice nudge through there. He runs very deep through the chicane. The second chicane here, turns 4 and 5 here at Monza, and runs that really awkward slow line right on the apex, the second apex of that chicane. I have to slow down and kind of react. And then coming through here, you see how close I am to nearly losing control of the car and wiping out 2 other people. But managed to get through there. Okay, I lose a lot of momentum on the exit, however. I was kind of pinned against the apex by Jordster here, and you see I wanted to get into that slipstream, but I had honourably airborne on my left-hand side, taking the slipstream of Jordster, so I, you know, lost a third position. If you go back and have a look, I know we kind of glossed over that quite quickly, but I left a lot of room on the exit for what was that, Captain Muffin 88. He kind of kept a central line throughout the track, and it kind of put me off. I left him plenty of room right on the curb as well. A bit of the track and the curb he could have used, but he took that central line and just wiped me out. So, you know, I'm not a fan of that kind of driving, especially given that turn 1 incident where he's just like, ah ha ha ha, yeah, I pushed you off, but I put my hazards on, so it's all good, mate. Sorry about that. But anyway, we'll come back to the current action now. I go for a bit of a move into Parabolica by accident, and I really did not mean to go for that move there. And you see we have a bit of a similar situation to Seraglio straight. I've got another car on my left hand side, so I'm not able to pull into slipstream at this point. We're going to come into turn 1, but unfortunately we've dropped right down to 9th position after starting 5th, so this race isn't really going well either. Honourably Airborne goes for a bit of a punt onto Jordster coming through turn 1, and then this guy tries to pull out of the slipstream, but I was just there alongside enough to kind of almost cause him to lose control, and, you know, I was not anticipating that whatsoever, so got a little bit awkward through there. Airborne has a half-second penalty. I lose another position due to being offline coming through turn 3. Coming into the second chicane, 2 abreast, up ahead. Let's see what happens here. I'm on the left-hand side, a little bit of contact on the exit, but I was not alongside far enough to warrant space being left for me, so that was fine. But finally, we just fall into a bit of a train at this point. This is mainly what I want. I don't really want to be running side by side, especially through Monza where you're taking a lot of speed through these corners. So up ahead, Honourably Airborne is going to serve his half-second penalty. We're about to see if it's going to be enough for me to get that position up coming into Ascari. I don't think it is, as he's getting into the slipstream of another car, getting back up to speed. It's not even going to be enough for DE5 Tronic to get a move into Ascari there, coming through Ascari. Now, get a nice run through there actually. Tronic is a little bit sideways, caught on the sleeping policeman curbs up on the high curb on the middle of Ascari through turn 9 it is officially known as. But we are once again slipstream train coming into Parabolica. Of course every car ahead of me is in slipstream, so it's going to be quite impossible for me to make any gains, any slipstream based gains when the car in front is in turn in slipstream of the previous car. We will of course as a group catch up to the leader of the pack, which I'm not quite sure what position, probably 3rd or 4th, judging by the minimap in the top right corner of your screen. We'll come into turn 1 and see what incidents occur, if any. Braking on just before the 150 board, just before it in this particular instance, you see there's a massive concertina effect, and I get another punt from behind as well. Massive concertina effect into the braking zone. Honourably Airborne slows down way more than necessary, and then Tronic goes into the back of him, I go into the back of Tronic, and Max Gassett goes into the back of me. So yeah, concertina effect, you know, that is kind of like, imagine an accordion, how an accordion sort of moves, I guess. That's kind of what happened in the braking zone there. Coming into the second chicane, I'm quite a far way back, so I can, you know, attack the chicane as much as I like, but unfortunately in this instance I'll get a 1-second penalty, so that will be a half-second penalty on both apexes. I was just way too greedy through there as well. I did run very wide on the exit, but my right 2 wheels were on the track just enough for the 4-wheel drive to allow me to not lose speed. But it may look at this point this race is not going well, and it isn't, but compared to my previous 2 it is going much better. I've gotten to lap 3 without seeing a 2 at the start of my position, which is fantastic. Much better than previous result. But we'll come through Ascari. You see I'm behind Max Gasset, 28. Not quite, oh, actually we are in the slipstream, about a second behind, but he is in the slipstream of the cars ahead. But you see, we just skip ahead to about the second chicane of lap 4. There was really not much action that happened for about half a lap. He lost the slipstream of the guys up ahead, and I have kept the slipstream of him, so it is now looking at this point where I'm going to be able to do a legitimate overtake for position. Lesmo 2, not quite the place to do it. It's quite a narrow point on the track going onto a narrow straight. Penalties being served up ahead as we speak, and then I think that is DE5 Tronic who's got to slow down coming down the straight. Is it going to be enough for Gasser to get into the slipstream? It doesn't look like it, as I'm still gaining, but I'm not going to go for that move just yet. I just back off so I don't run into the back of him coming into Ascari. I'm a little bit wide off turn 8, but we get through here okay as long as we've got that slipstream. Trying to set a move up into turn 1 is ultimately what I'm going to try and do. So I'm going to try and slipstream a little bit closer down this straight towards Parabolica. Not quite close enough to go for a move on this instance, and I think Gasset has just got the slipstream of Tronic now. You see we were gaining quite slowly coming through that straight between turns 10 and 11. But through Parabolica we get a fine exit, an okay average exit, into the slipstream of Gasset. We're much closer to Gasset than he is to the car ahead, so the effects felt from slipstream is going to be much stronger by me. Let's see if we can line this move up into turn 1. I'm gaining, albeit slowly. Gain begins to accelerate as we get towards the end of the straight. I'm not quite going to go for that move. I don't feel like I was close enough to lunge it up the inside. The last thing I want is a massive incident and penalties and my tyres wearing out more than they need to, so I just back off in that instance there. On the exit of the first chicane, we are still about 2 tenths behind Max Gasset. Let's see if we can let's try and get that move up into turn 2 through Curva Grande. At this point he goes slightly defensive, begins to think about going to defensive, but once again not quite close enough. So let's see if we can get through here without penalties this time. You see I take a much more tentative line through there, and I have the run on the exit as well. The Huracan very planted around this track, especially on medium tyres, even though they're worn. But through Lesmo 1, we've got the overspeed on the exit, but I was just going to understeer off the track, so I have to come out of it. Lesmo 2, not the place to go for the overtake unless you're already completely alongside. He runs very deep through Lesmo 2, so I'm going to be able to get him on the exit. Side by side, coming down Seraglio straight, a slight left kink, which of course will be in his favour, but see, we go to chase cam to see his nose just drops behind the rear of my car. So I have successfully gotten that position up, breaking into Ascari. We're just going to make sure we're able to defend that position. Get it a little bit incorrect. I ran a little bit too hot into the first part of that apex, and now we're going to try and focus on catching up to this group ahead. We have also got to keep an eye on Max Gasset behind, because the roles are now reversed. He's in my slipstream, but all I can hope for is that he kind of learnt from my sort of tactics trying to overtake him. I only went for it when I knew it was on. I didn't sort of pull out a slipstream and sort of go for the move where I wasn't really close enough. It was going to be quite an adventurous move in order to get it finished. For example, the potential move I almost got coming into the first chicane of the previous lap about 1 lap ago. But he's in my slipstream coming into turn 1. We'll see what happens. I'm going to brake just before the 150 meter board and he completely misjudges it. It's unfortunate. You hate to see it. There it is, and then you see the barrier flying across my screen, and yeah, he completely gets stopped in his tracks there, so we no longer have to worry about that. But we're going to skip ahead. We're going to begin to see some pit stops here. So of course I have not seen the 20th position in this particular race. Actually, it doesn't even exist. 17th is the last position. We haven't been in last, so we're going to go for the optimum strategy here. We're not going to go for the alternate pick up the pieces strategy. We're going to go for the actual strategy, which is a 1-stop stint of about 7 or 8 laps, 7, 8, 9 laps on medium you can do, and then the rest on hard. But see, it started for like 8, we stay out, but we managed to get up a few positions, up into 7th at this point. Remember, we were 10th, 9th, 10th or 11th, I don't even remember. But 6th is just up the road. We, of course, are due for a pit stop. I think that does happen at the end of this lap, and George behind is, of course, going to be on fresh tyres. We're going to have to keep an eye out for him. He's going to be quite racy See, even through Curva Grande, he gets quite a nice run through there. I was probably understeering and sliding quite a bit. Through the second chicane here at Monza, I run a little bit onto the gravel, but like I've said previously, four-wheel drive with this car allows for me to run two wheels on the gravel and not really lose that much time at all. Coming through Lesmo 1, Jordster makes a massive gain through there. He's firmly into my slipstream, into my radar, coming through there at this point. Turn 7? Why did I say turn? I was meant to say Lesmo 2. But all good. Penalty being served up ahead. Moto Junior 09. I think he was the pole sitter. Pretty sure he was. Not quite having the race that he had hoped for. Coming to Ascari for the 8th time. Jordster almost goes for the move on the entry to Ascari, but I ran a little bit deep. See, we broke fairly similar points on the... we had fairly similar braking points, even though he had brand new tyres. I ran deep thanks to my worn tyres, and it gets a little bit awkward in the exit. I think Jordster just makes light contact with my rear. Coming in the exit of Ascari there, we're seeing the difference in tyres there. I run very, well, I was going to, not that wide, but very quite wide through Parabolica. That is a sign my medium tyres are going off. So what we're going to do here is pull into the pit lane here at Monza and go for our one of one stop. Hard tyres, no refuel. Fuel is absolutely not an issue in this race. This is a tyre-based race. We want to be on the correct tyre at the correct point in the race. That is how sort of the positions are made up in the pit stops here. And for the most part, we had a fairly clean stint on the medium tyres. We did have that little bit of a fight with Max Gassett, but overall, I think it was fine. As you know, I gained through slipstream, but sort of evened out when I had to back off, not going for the moves when they're not on. If you did catch that, Honourably Airborne ran across turn 2, sort of cut turn 2, running quite deep. We are, of course, now on cold, hard tyres. Unlike Cash, cold and hard is not what you want your tyres to be in motorsports, so we're going to have to be really quite careful. Still using our worn tyre medium braking marker, just right next to that sort of exit dirt road off to the into the fence for the second chicane, and we're going to have to, you know, really monitor the amount of understeer we're getting, especially throughout this first lap. Over the course of a stint, you can very much get in tune with your tyres. It's, you know, you can begin to quite quickly feel just how grippy your tyres are, and hard tyres, of course, offer less grip than medium tyres, obviously. That is why you want to be on medium tyres for longer, but eventually the soft tyre drop-off is, you end up losing more time by being on them than on the harder compound. But for the most part, first lap is going to be your most sketchy on your hard tyres, especially because when there are multiple tyres on offer, you do most of your practice on the softer tyre to try and get the best lap time, because you are practicing for qualifying. And, you know, then when you say you did the practice the other way around, say there was soft, medium, hard tyres available, if you did all your practice on hard tyres and soft tyre was a requirement, by the time you got onto your soft tyre stint, you would not be sort of as pacey as the rest of the field on their soft tyres because you haven't done any practice on it. Overall, I would say it's more, you know, it's more beneficial to do your practice on the softest tyre available, because you are practicing for qualifying, which hopefully sets you up for a good race ideally, and then you can kind of work with the hard tyres as long as you understand there is going to be less grip available, especially on that first lap. We'll come back to the race now. Someone did go into the pits, so we're up into 9th, and you see throughout the course of especially the straight bits after Ascari and into turn 1, we have caught up quite a bit of ground to Honourably Airborne here. We are now firmly into the slipstream, 6/10 behind, which is pretty good slipstream range to be. He runs a little bit wide. You really want to keep it quite tight through Curva Grande, because then you are automatically already over on the right hand side. You don't have to waste sort of straight distance getting over to the right hand side for the entry of this chicane here. But on the exit, we were quite strong through that chicane. Actually, I got my braking point quite nicely, especially thanks to practice and, you know, the previous 2 races I've already done. But see how much ground we have caught up to Honourably Airborne now, and now we are closer to him than he is to Tronic, ahead of him, so our slipstream effect is going to be stronger than his. Ergo, we're going to get a much better gain from slipstream compared to honourably airborne, and that is going to translate into gains. See, we are firmly gaining down the straight. Is it going to be enough to go for the move into Ascari? Definitely not. I've backed off about 300 metres before the corner. Already, the last thing I want to do is to brake a slight bit too late. When I'm too close, run into the back of him, punt him off the track, get myself a penalty, and, you know, run the risk of looking stupid and ruining his race. So my best bet is to back off. Knowing there's a straight after Ascari, I can make up for that time loss from backing off by being in the slipstream down the straight. That straight there, I did not make quite the gains that I had previously made, thanks to him being a little bit closer to Tronic and able to negate my gains. But we go around for another time. No pit stops yet. No further pit stops. I assume these guys have gone for their pit stops already. And you see I've been in that slipstream for an entire lap, and I've just set my fastest lap of the race, 57.4. And I am on my hard tyre stint, keep that in mind. So throughout my whole medium tyre stint, I'm already faster on my hard tyres. That is how important slipstream is, especially at Monza, where there are pretty much, you know, this isn't a straight obviously, but it is a slipstream zone. So we are able to use the slipstream, even through Curva Grande, more than wide enough for these cars to be able to, you know, keep slipstream and not feel dirty air. Instead, very, very close coming into the second chicane. I just feathered the throttle a little bit. I'm not going to go for the move into the second chicane. Second chicane, I feel, is a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a unicorn, I feel. It's not really the kind of place to go for an overtake, even though it feels like it. Turn 1 is much better, and I can get moves in Lesmo 1 if my opponent runs dink, and Parabolic I can get a nice cutback. They're my main points on the track where I can get a move to. Of course, any straight you can slipstream past. Honourably airborne gets Lesmo 2 completely incorrect, slides across the apex of it, gets a 1 second penalty and almost bins it into the wall on the exit, and I go for that move thanks to the overspeed that I get. I go for that move in this instance. I don't want to kind of be stuck behind him where I know he's going to serve a penalty. We have to get a good Ascari here. I want to be able to get the slipstream of Tronic coming on the exit. I don't think I quite do. I'm about 1.9 seconds behind. Honourably airborne is in my slipstream, so I think what we're going to see here is him go for the move on my inside, which is not really what I want, especially considering he's going to serve the penalty. But we're going to come into the braking zone and breaking my 100 metre board mark. He completely flies up the inside, obviously just misjudging his braking point being in slipstream, which does change quite dramatically, and it's exacerbated when you're on the harder tyre compounds. Of course, when you hit the brakes late, we're going to slow down even slower because you're on the hard tyre. Looking behind now, Moto Junior 06, or 09, sorry, is pulling out to go for the move into turn 1. We're going to hit our braking point nicely just before the 150 metre board, given our tyres are hard and slightly worn, and he manages to get it pulled up on the apex nicely. That is a textbook move into turn 1. I'll give him that, and completely my fault. I understeer off the track, trying to get onto the power up. That there is a, you know, that's the result of practicing on your medium tyres and knowing when you can get onto the power on your medium tyres and doing the same thing on hard tyres. Of course, there being less grip, you're going to understeer further wide. End of lap 13, we've got 2 laps to go. Hopefully, we got this pair up ahead. The idea basically now is they fight. I've also got a car right behind me actually, Old Mate 73. He's firmly in my slipstream coming into turn 1, braking. Actually, I brake on the 150 metre board that time. That's quite, you know, that's quite adventurous, braking that late even by me. Old Mate brakes even later and still manages to pull it up on the apex. So we're going to run side by side through Curva Grande now. Check out this. I remember this. Imagine looking at this from an external shot. How beautiful. 2 Lamborghini Huracans cleanly side by side on the Italian circuit, going through Curva Grande. Coming into the second chicane, I've got the inside. Old Mate has the superior braking once again. I have a bit of a feeling he might be on medium tyres, but we're going to be in the slipstream now, coming into Lesmo 1, or the Lesmos. I just run into the back of him instead of going for that move, which is, I think, a much better decision. Hopefully we can get that slipstream going down the straight, Seraglio straight, if I can get my tongue twisters out of the way and get my proper tongue flatteners, I guess you could refer to it as, non-tongue twisters. Coming down Seraglio straight now, I've got a bit of a feeling Old Mate might be getting dregs of slipstream from Tronic, see, but not quite as strong as I'm getting slipstream from Old Mate. So coming through Ascari, I'm strong through Ascari, I'm able to get that acceleration point nailed. You see we've got that little bit of an overspeed on the exit. The gap has just gone under 0.2 of a second. We're gaining quite quickly coming down towards Parabolica. Is it going to be enough to get the move on? Not quite. I just feather the throttle and sort of hang back a bit. He runs a little bit wide off the mid part of Parabolic. You see, that's the line I like to go for. And then if Old Mate wasn't there, I would have gone right back over to the right hand side once the car allows me to free up the steering. We're going to be in the slipstream coming into turn 1. I think, yeah, he probably would be in the slipstream of Tronic at this point, so we're not gaining as fast as we could be, although we are gaining very quickly now. I pull out to the inside. We are on the last lap, so what have I got to lose? Brakes, absolutely nailed. Just outbrake him, meet the apex of turn 1, park it on the apex of turn 2, first gear, launch out of that corner, straight into the slipstream of Tronic. This could not really be going better, unless our positions were higher than it could be. But in terms of a move, I've also got the slipstream, or dregs of it, from the car ahead to help me maintain my position coming into the second chicane. Down on the radar, he's slightly offensive. Coming into the braking zone, he's stronger on the brakes than me, closes up on the brakes, but I'm strong through the second chicane. Four-wheel drive, rescuing my 2 tyres that went onto the gravel there. Coming into Lesmo now. Get a nice punt from him, actually, coming through Lesmo 1. And I look behind and kind of expected him to go past, to be honest, but fair play to him. He actually slowed and waited for me, and I think, you know, we were having quite a good race there. I think that was a much better decision on his behalf, and he gets it a little bit incorrect coming out of Lesmo 2. But that's going to be the end of that one. We're bringing home a 9th. Remember, we started 5th. But if you remember my previous results, a 14th and a 16th with about 86 and 73 points respectively or something. Not great. But a 9th place in the final slot, of course I had no other choice than to accept this as the best result I could have possibly got here, which of course I thought was much higher before I entered the first race. But ultimately we had the number 12 on our car. We finished 9th, 143 points for Australia, which is fine. Could be a lot better. I've had better results, but that is, you know, that's essentially that combination. Bit of a tale of woes, but my final race, a little bit of a better performance, and that's what we're going to go with. Grasping at straws at this one, basically, when a 9th place is the one you settle on. But we're going to leave that one there. Was a bit of a tough round, that one, but I understand. It happens, you know. You can't win every race, even though you want to, even though you think you can. Some people reckon they can. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I would love to hear if you did, so hit that like button, that's the best way to tell me, and subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.